They handcuffed a black female SEAL sniper in court. Then an Admiral entered, and everyone froze. Have you ever seen someone applauded like a hero, and then handcuffed like a traitor, all in the same morning? Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. 5:42 a.m. A cold wind brushed across the marble steps of Federal Courthouse No. 6 in Washington, D.C. The sun hadn't yet risen above the eastern skyline when the silence was shattered by heavy footsteps. 3 military police officers stepped out of a black armored vehicle, 2 flanking the sides, 1 leading. Between them walked a woman in an orange prison jumpsuit, her gait steady like a soldier on parade, her wrists bound in a chain of cold steel. Her name was Emma Briggs. She wasn't just a Navy lieutenant colonel. She was the first black female sniper ever admitted into the elite SEAL team, had served in 4 countries, completed 28 flawless missions, and was the only person in history nominated for the Medal of Honor after saving 37 civilians from an illegal bioweapons operation. And yet today, instead of standing on a podium of honor, she was being led into a courtroom as if she were a national criminal. Outside the courthouse, hundreds had gathered. Banners flew high. One side chanted, "Justice for Briggs," while the other screamed, "Traitors deserve death." Camera lenses whirred, binoculars focused from every angle. A CNN reporter whispered into a microphone, "We are witnessing an unprecedented moment in U.S. military history. A female SEAL on trial for leaking classified documents just hours before receiving the Medal of Honor." The footage rolled, the moments that had made Emma a national name. Crouched in the red sands of Kandahar, eyes aligned with her scope, lips counting her pulse. One shot that saved an entire medical outpost. But now, those very images ran beneath the banner headline, "Hero or Traitor?" Inside the courtroom, the tension felt like a blade strung taut between extremes. 3 former soldiers who had once fought beside her, Simmons, Taylor, and Reese, sat on the 3rd bench. They said nothing. They just watched. Their eyes were lost, confused, because only yesterday they thought they'd be watching Emma receive a medal. At the front, Prosecutor Philip Mercer, known for letting no emotion cloud the law, stood, his gaze sharp as ice. He pointed directly at Emma, betrayed this country, violated the Warriors Code, leaked classified data, and endangered her teammates in a covert operation in Central Asia. We will prove that she let emotion override judgment, and the result is a political nightmare. Emma sat still, saying nothing. No protest, no defense. Her expression was calm to the point of discomfort. No anger, no fear, just silence, as if she were waiting for something larger to arrive. Presiding Judge Elaine Thompson, with over 25 years on the bench, known for being strict but fair, tapped her gavel gently. "Lieutenant Colonel Emma Briggs, do you plead guilty or not guilty?" Emma didn't move. The judge's tone sharpened. "This is my final request. Lieutenant Colonel, do you plead guilty or not guilty?" Silence. The air seemed vacuumed from the room. No one dared to breathe. And then, boom! The heavy mahogany doors at the back of the courtroom burst open, echoing like thunder. Every head turned instantly. A figure appeared, bathed in light reflecting off the medals on her chest, dressed in full uniform, and carrying a presence so commanding that it silenced an entire room of lawyers, judges, reporters, and officials. Admiral Callista Vaughn, commander of Naval Special Operations, had entered, and from that moment forward, the trial, and every conspiracy behind it, began to tremble. If there was ever a woman capable of silencing an entire room full of power, from federal judges, top prosecutors, to hardened political titans. In under 15 seconds, it was Admiral Callista Vaughn. And that morning, she entered like a storm, meticulously preordained. Her silhouette emerged within the frame of a 3-meter-tall mahogany doorway, shoulders adorned with a 4-star rank, the left side of her chest bearing a column of medals stretching down to her ribcage, each one marking a mission that nearly claimed her life. Her military boots struck the marble floor with steps that seemed to shake the decaying layers of a justice system long worn thin. No one invited her. No one knew she was coming. But she came, just as she had once commanded 137 special ops missions, directly ordered over 22,000 Navy personnel across 4 continents, and brought home hundreds of soldiers from battlefields not even charted by CIA maps. Callista didn't glance at the prosecutor, nor at the audience. Her eyes were locked on the bench, where Chief Judge Elaine Thompson held her gavel like the weight of the nation's fate. Her voice rang out. Not loud, not rushed, but with such authority that no one dared interrupt. I request an immediate recess. I need a private discussion with the judge and DOJ representative. Right now. Judge Thompson, a white woman known as stainless steel of federal law, froze. Her gaze swept over the gallery, then stopped at Callista's face. No objection. No demand for explanation. Just a single, solemn nod, as if conceding to something that didn't require permission. Court recess, 25 minutes, the judge announced briskly, then rose and walked straight to her chambers. As the courtroom doors shut behind her, Camille Harris, a senior agent from the Department of Justice, bowed her head slightly, slipping a long disused personal phone from her coat pocket. It was a black phone, ultra-secure, connected to a private military-grade network. She dialed a Virginia area code. 3 rings, then silence. No one answered, but she didn't stop. The media was ordered to cut feed. Cameras are powered down. Journalists were ushered out. A few reporters whispered calls back to their stations, but no one truly knew what was unfolding. Something larger than all of them was quietly shifting beneath the surface. On the defendant's bench, Emma Briggs finally looked up, for the first time since entering the courtroom. Her eyes met Callista's. No words were exchanged, yet everyone close enough could feel it. A voiceless language flowed between them, the kind only shared by those who have truly seen war, touched the edge between death and justice, and chosen to stand when everything around them screamed to kneel. In a shadowed corner of the courtroom, Senator James Williams, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, who once called Emma a stain on military discipline during a televised interview, was quietly retreating. His hand trembled. His gaze dropped to the floor. His face had turned nearly translucent. He knew Callista didn't come to negotiate. Inside Camille's pocket, the phone vibrated. A message appeared, encrypted, 3 lines only. Glass dagger. Classified threat. Level 6, do not proceed. The alert came from the Department of Defense's internal system, a transmission steeped in code word secrecy, typically reserved for events capable of collapsing federal integrity. Camille stared at the message for a few seconds. Then she locked the screen, left everything behind, and exited the courtroom at a quick pace. She was going to find Phelim, a man never mentioned in this case, yet once a critical link in Operation Glass Dagger, the top-secret mission Emma had taken part in, and the real reason she sat on that bench today. What Camille knew, and no one else in that courtroom yet realized, was that if she didn't find Phelim before the hearing resumed, Emma's life, and the truth behind that blood-stained mission, would be buried forever in a vault no one was allowed to open. And when Callista gently sat down in the first row, placing her hands on her knees, her eyes landed on the seal insignia pinned to Emma's chest. She exhaled slowly. A battle had just begun. Not with guns, not with bullets, but with truth, forged in steel, carried by a woman who once chose to save a stranger's life, rather than follow orders. And this time, they would not let her fall alone. 2 years earlier, Ghazni region, Afghanistan. A land as barren as the moon, where fine dust slipped into every fold of cloth, and the air carried the scent of gunpowder that never slept. On top of a hill covered in white rock, under layers of dusty camouflage, Lieutenant Colonel Emma Briggs lay motionless behind the scope of an M110. Her breathing was slow, steady, eyes drawn tight like a bowstring, peering through the dense thermal haze of the noonday desert. The top-secret mission was codenamed Glass Dagger, a task not listed on any official combat operations system. The target compound was located 11.6 kilometers from the Pakistan border, marked as abandoned per CIA intelligence. But data from the RQ-4B Global Hawk drone showed something else. 32 heat signatures, 18 of which were small biological signals, clearly children. Emma knew immediately something was wrong, not because she had 14 years in special operations or had led ambushes in Kunduz, but because instinct, the kind honed through blood and loss, was screaming in her chest. She switched the M110's scope to thermal mode, and then she saw what made her heart sink. Small human forms lying in a row of metal cages, children and women, some unconscious, others trembling in silence. No weapons, no sign of combat, just the agonizing stillness of fear under control. Command's orders are no engagement. We monitor, record, and pull out. Crispin, the comms officer, whispered into her ear through the internal channel. Emma didn't respond. Her hand remained steady, but her mind was racing. She had seen similar things before, in Rwanda, in Mosul, in black site prisons in Ukraine. But this was worse. The satellite feed had been deliberately jammed to erase the base from tactical maps. Immediately, Emma transmitted an image report via a high-level encrypted channel to Admiral Callista Vaughn, the only person she trusted. She wrote simply, "High likelihood, biological test camp. Need immediate directive." The reply came after 3 minutes, brief. "Continue surveillance. Do not engage." Emma bit her lip. Orders were orders. But those children couldn't wait another 6 hours. Over the next 360 minutes, she used the infrared scope to document all activity inside the compound. She saw 3 men wearing badges from Black River Consulting, a private military company once investigated for prisoner experiments. They were injecting the children with a grayish fluid. No labels, no system. Emma said nothing to the team, but her goggles had been upgraded with infrared recording. Every second of the unfolding tragedy was captured, proof of what the system was trying to bury. At 1747, as the last beam of sunset slipped behind the cliffs, Emma stood up, pulled out her earpiece, and said, "Surveillance mission is over. From now on, this is a humanitarian rescue. Anyone who objects may withdraw immediately." The team remained silent. Then, one by one, they nodded. They trusted her, not just because she was in command, but because they knew Emma never let emotions overrule reason. She simply refused to look away from evil. All were ready, except one. Crispin, the only one who wouldn't meet her eyes. His hand clutched a disposable satellite phone. Emma didn't see it, but in the dark, Crispin had sent a single message. "Glass Dagger, compromised." And exactly 14 minutes later, just as the team reached the compound's rear gate, the ground shook. A Hellfire missile, launched from a Predator UAV, struck the center of the facility, directly targeting the civilian holding zone. Dust and fire spiraled into the air like hell's breath. The mission collapsed, everything crumbled. And in that instant, Emma understood. They had been betrayed, not by the enemy, but by someone within their team. And from that moment on, the memory of Operation Glass Dagger was no longer classified intel. It became a living ghost that followed her home, and now it was dragging her into court as a traitor. But Emma knew hell wasn't over yet. The truth still waited to be unearthed, and only when it came to light would the world finally understand who had truly betrayed the country. The desert wind surged, kicking up blades of dust that tore through the night like knives. When the watch on Emma Briggs's wrist ticked to 22:16, she silently raised her hand. 3 fingers split the team. Not a sound, not a question. The soldiers beside her understood. From this moment on, everything they did would no longer be protected by law. But they moved forward, because it was the right thing to do. Alpha Team, led by Emma herself, approached from the east, targeting the satellite relay system mounted on an old tower. Bravo Team swept in from the north, tasked with jamming all radio signals and blocking alarms. Charlie Team advanced toward the underground west gate, aiming to breach and open the detainee holding areas. Less than 4 minutes after infiltration, Bravo reported success. All radio frequencies were cut, internal CCTV looped, and the surveillance system had been forced into recording on repeat. They had a maximum of 14 minutes before the system rebooted on backup power. In a low, cold room that smelled like a morgue, Emma and Alpha discovered a mobile laboratory. On a row of LCD screens, streams of data scrolled nonstop: gene sequencing, biomutation mapping, age-segmented viral models. One chilling file stood out: Project Echo, Cycle 2B. Emma plugged in an external drive and began copying data, while simultaneously recording the entire scene. A glass vial of gray fluid vibrated on the floor beneath their boots with each step. From the next room, they heard faint groaning. A soldier nudged open the door. Inside were 37 people, hands bound with medical zip ties, eyes vacant like souls already departed. Among them, 9 children, the youngest maybe 6 or 7. Emma stepped in. A frail, curly-haired girl stared at her and whispered in Dari, the language she learned from her mother. Mother's dead. 3 days ago. She didn't get up anymore. Emma knelt, gently undid the bindings, and cradled the child in her arms. The girl's breath was weak, but her heartbeat remained. Emma held her close, grasping the last thread of humanity left in this nightmare. Then, boom! An explosion shattered the ground beneath them. A second missile, launched from the southeast, struck just 50 meters away. Flames erupted, and searing heat slammed into the team, pinning them against the walls. Emma shielded the child with her own body. Her back struck a steel wall hard. 2 ribs on her left side shattered, but she didn't make a sound. The child was unharmed. That alone was enough for her to keep going. Outside the compound, Charlie Team was ambushed. A light KA-60 helicopter, unmarked by any national insignia, circled like a predator. Mercenaries from Black River swarmed in. Their rifles were FNS-CAR models, not distributed to U.S. forces. The gunfire crackled with one clear message: "We knew you were coming." Emma didn't hesitate. She gave the order over the radio: "All units fall back. Bring the drive and all civilians. Leave no one behind." An MH-60. Black Hawk support aircraft was already inbound. Her team ran through the gunfire, carrying children, lifting women. No one let go. Each step was a retreat from hell. On the evac chopper, Emma sat by the door, blood seeping through her armor, soaking the white shirt of the little girl asleep in her arms. A medic reached to administer a transfusion, but Emma shook her head. "Wait until everyone's safe." I can take it." She had lost nearly 1.8 liters of blood, almost half her body's volume. But she remained conscious. She locked eyes with each person they had pulled from the darkness, one by one. Only one team member was seriously injured, a thigh wound from shrapnel, but the bleeding had been controlled. All 37 people were saved. The compound was flattened. The data was backed up by Emma into 3 copies, triple encrypted, sent to 3 separate entities. One to Special Operations Command, one to the Pentagon's internal office, and the last, no one knows where it went. When the helicopter landed at Ramstein Base in Germany, designated for tactical evacuations, Crispin had vanished. No one saw him board the chopper. No one saw him sign the redeployment log. From that moment on, he became a ghost in the system, protected, hidden, erased, as though he never existed. As for Emma, the woman who defied orders, saved 37 lives, and paid for it with her entire career, she was now labeled a traitor. But she never regretted it, and she knew the real battle was only just beginning. More than a month after Operation Glass Dagger, the C-17 Globemaster III, carrying Emma Briggs, landed at Andrews Air Force Base at 3:12 a.m. There was no ceremony, no honor guard waiting, only 2 military police officers in uniform standing at the bottom of the ramp. In the cold wind of Washington, D.C., they took her away in silence, without a single explanation. Emma did not resist. She understood clearly. Her physical wounds may have been stitched up, but the real battle was still underway. And this time, the enemy carried no weapons, only power. Instead of being summoned to the Pentagon to report on her mission, as protocol dictated, Emma was taken directly to a high-security holding facility on North Island, San Diego, under the pretext of verifying violations of tactical orders. At first, she believed it was a clerical mistake, but on the 12th day, when guards confiscated even her pen and notepad, she realized she was not being treated as a witness, but as a suspect. Over the next 9 months, Emma was transferred across 6 different military installations, from Fort Belvoir in Virginia to Misawa Air Base in Japan. She was never allowed to consult her attorney. Every call was monitored. Every letter was censored. Even the doctors treating her were denied full access to her medical records from the operation. Meanwhile, at Naval Special Warfare Command, Admiral Callista Vaughn, her former commanding officer and most powerful advocate, pushed hard to submit the case files, including video data, scene photos, and internal orders from Glass Dagger. But within 48 hours, her classified access was suspended. A message from the Pentagon's internal office arrived, ordering her to take indefinite medical leave. Callista called 6 senior generals. None dared to speak. One left a single cryptic message. She shouldn't have opened her mouth about Black River. They're not just a company. Emma, who should have been treated for post-traumatic stress, promoted in rank, and awarded the Medal of Honor, was instead invited to sign a settlement document. She would receive the medal, be exempt from prosecution, and retire quietly, if and only if she agreed never to disclose the truth. She looked straight at the officer handing her the document, her voice cold as sharpened stone. So the price of 37 lives is silence. She tore the paper in half, and on the day of the National Award ceremony, as the entire country watched the live broadcast, as the American flag fluttered and the military band played Anchors Away, military police stormed the stage and produced an emergency arrest warrant. Emma was handcuffed in front of millions of viewers. Major newspapers, like the Washington Herald and New York Sentinel, raced for headlines. First female SEAL, now a national security suspect. Betrayal or attempted coup? Heroism fabricated or atrocities hidden? The videos of Operation Glass Dagger were tampered with. Every frame showing Emma rescuing civilians was removed. Instead, media outlets aired clips of her running through fences and firing shots. No sound, no context, painting her as a rogue assassin unlawfully infiltrating a humanitarian facility. 3 charges were filed: treason, for disobeying a high command order and revealing a base location; leaking classified data, for transmitting video files from the battlefield; obstructing a Black Ops mission, causing significant operational and material damage. Social media exploded. Half the public called her a hero betrayed by her nation. The other half, swayed by manipulated reports, branded her a spark for global conflict, a reckless officer drunk on self-righteousness. Then the court date came. At the first hearing, when Emma entered the courtroom with steel cuff marks still fresh on her wrists, the most shocking thing wasn't the accusations. It was the complete absence of the United States Navy. No representative, no legal counsel, no flags, no spokesperson. She, who once wore 8 medals on her chest, who had taken out a Taliban commander from 1,204 meters away, who had saved 37 lives with her own body, now stood before the court as a shadow, abandoned by the very world she had risked everything to defend. And this was only the beginning, because the truth, though twisted and buried, was still smoldering, waiting for its moment to erupt. The air in the federal courtroom that day was thick like the stillness before a storm. At 8:12 a.m., 3 unmarked SUVs quietly pulled up to the courthouse entrance. Stepping out was Admiral Callista Vaughn, her posture upright, her face stern, and in her hand, a triple-sealed folder bearing the bright red stamp of the Naval Special Warfare Command. No one stopped her. No one dared ask where she was going. Judge Elaine Thompson, known across federal circles as the Iron Hand of Justice, formally declared a special hearing in session. The press was escorted out. Broadcast cameras were disabled. The oak doors shut behind them, and inside, a new battle began. Not with bullets, but every bit as dangerous as war. Camille Harris, a U.S. Department of Justice agent, stepped to the witness stand. In her hand was a military-grade external hard drive, evidence obtained from an anonymous source. But everyone in the room knew there was only one person capable of breaking through the military's triple encryption system: Eli Seraph, the hacker who had paralyzed the National Security Network during the 2017 NSA leak. This time, he had chosen to side with Emma. Camille played the first video. On the massive screen appeared a dim, grainy night in Ghazni, infrared flashes capturing every motion. Emma appeared, not as the attacker the military indictment had painted her to be, but as someone shielding a child with her own body, caught in crossfire from mercenaries wearing Black River insignias. A murmur spread through the courtroom. In the corner, the Navy colonel who had signed Emma's indictment lowered his head, sweat beating at his temple. This footage had never appeared in any official investigation, evidence of a systematic cover-up. Then, the courtroom doors burst open a second time. Phelim, the Afghan interpreter who had served during the mission, staggered in, blood staining his left shoulder, shirt torn, clutching a bullet-riddled file folder. He had been ambushed that morning on his way to court, but still made it, just minutes after receiving 11 stitches at Medical Post 4. His voice trembled, but rang clear. She bandaged me in the middle of gunfire. I was crying, but she stayed calm, protecting me and the children. We weren't soldiers. We were locked up for drug testing. And she was the only one who stood up, while the whole world looked away. A moment of silence swept over the courtroom like the air had been sucked out. The court reporter's hand trembled, a tear falling onto the transcript page. Judge Thompson, who had always worn an expression cold as iron, shed tears for the first time. She stood, pulling from a pocket inside her robe a wrinkled photograph. It showed a young man in a combat medic's uniform. "This is my brother, Lieutenant Thomas Reeves. He died in that operation. And now I know. You were the last one who tried to save him." Each word from her lips pierced the very system she served. She declared before the entire courtroom, "Emma Briggs is no traitor. She is the final proof of humanity in the face of war. The charges are dismissed. Her honor is restored." Applause erupted from the back rows. Veterans, Emma's former teammates, cried openly, gripping each other's hands. Morning light poured through the courthouse windows, catching the blood-stained folds of Emma's uniform, casting a belated glow upon justice. But the joy lasted less than 3 minutes. A strange sound broke the moment. The courtroom doors opened again, this time revealing 4 OIS agents in full black tactical suits, magnetic cuffs in hand, and the insignia, Order 1949, stitched on their sleeves. The lead agent stepped forward, voice devoid of emotion. "Emma Briggs, under Classified Directive 1949, you are hereby rearrested on suspicion of threatening the structural integrity of national defense." The room fell silent. Emma looked up, eyes locking with Callista Vaughn. The Admiral clenched her jaw, hiding a tear behind thin-rimmed glasses. Emma did not resist. She extended her hands, accepting the cuffs once more, this time colder, deeper, and tangled in political manipulation. But her gaze never changed. It remained the gaze of someone who knew the truth had finally been spoken. And from this point on, they could never silence her again. At 3:17 a.m., an unmarked UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter descended onto a barren patch of land deep within George Washington National Forest, Virginia. Inside the cabin, Emma Briggs sat blindfolded, her hands cuffed, flanked on both sides by Special Forces operatives with no name tags. No one said a word. There was only the hum of rotor blades and the steady beat of her heart, not out of fear, but because she had long grown accustomed to the silence of darkness. The place she was taken to bore a name that existed on no map: the Hollow. It was an off-the-books detention facility. No camp ID, no criminal records, no access granted to lawyers or family. Built 18 stories underground, it was surrounded by concrete walls designed to block bullets and electronic waves. This was a place meant for names that were never meant to exist. In the interrogation room, there were no windows, and the flicker of fluorescent lights blurred the line between reality and dream. Emma was stripped of her former rank and locked in an isolation cell with no contact permitted. She was given only a coverless Bible and a dull pencil. Meanwhile, Callista Vaughn was urgently summoned to the Pentagon. In the 4C National Security Briefing Room, she was interrogated for 3 hours by an internal review board, accused of abusing authority to disrupt national security operations by interfering in Emma's trial. They presented her phone recordings, encrypted emails, and access logs. But Callista did not waver. She responded with a single sentence. "Then who stands up when the system betrays its citizens?" Elsewhere, Camille Harris quietly reunited with Eli Seraph, the hacker who had helped her unlock the hidden footage. In a rented room at a roadside motel in suburban Arlington, Eli guided her into a shadow server. There, they uncovered a folder with a code name: Ghost Protocol, Class Omega. Inside were hundreds of files, video footage of human bioexperiments, documents showing congressional budget transfers to unofficial research, and one horrifying proposal: authorization to use biotoxins on stateless individuals to study mixed genome cell response. Signed, Kessler, the current director of OIS. Just 3 hours later, Eli was attacked by a man disguised as a delivery driver. He was stabbed 3 times, suffered 2 fractured ribs, and lost over a liter of blood. Before blacking out on a bench at Howard Hospital, Eli managed to upload all the data to an offshore server in Iceland, locked behind an encryption key known only to Camille. But the shadow war didn't stop there. Camille received news that her younger brother, Derek Harris, a former Marine and now an elementary school teacher in Norfolk, had been arrested on charges of involvement in narcotics trafficking. He had no criminal record, had never been under investigation. She understood instantly. This was leverage. Meanwhile, Emma, escorted to a secret military tribunal, was denied legal counsel, witnesses, or even access to her defense files. The trial was conducted on the 14th sublevel of the Hollow, judged by 3 masked officers. The indictment was vague. Tier 1 espionage, breach of strategic security, collusion with a foreign organization. If convicted, the sentence carried immediate execution without public notice. The presiding officer read the final line of the verdict. Emma Briggs is hereby convicted under Statute 14B-49.2. The sentence is effective immediately. But just as the gavel was about to fall, the thick steel door burst open. The sharp echo of leather shoes reverberated as 3 men in black Secret Service shirts entered. The one in the center raised a gold-sealed envelope from the White House. His voice rang out like lightning slicing through the dark. By direct order of the President of the United States, Lieutenant Commander Emma Briggs is to be released immediately. All charges are suspended, and any further action taken against her will be considered treason. The air in the room was sucked dry. The 3 judges were silent. And Emma, for the first time in months, smiled. Not because she was free, but because she knew the truth was breathing again. And the real traitor was about to be revealed. At 8:01 p.m., New York time, the entire national television network was disrupted for exactly 45 seconds. The screen went black. Then a simple logo appeared, a bleeding eye, accompanied by the words, "Echo must be heard." Immediately after, the image of a woman appeared. Her face was blurred, her voice distorted by security techs, but her words cut through the lies like a scalpel. I am Agent Camille Harris, currently affiliated with a federal task force. I have clear evidence showing that the United States government has facilitated biological experiments on civilians, including stateless children, under the guise of national security protection. She hit enter. The screen then played the first video. An 8-year-old boy strapped to a chair, his arms bruised purple, with bio devices puncturing his skin. Technicians in black lab coats bearing a faint logo. Black River Consulting. The boy whispered, "Where's my mom?" No one answered. The next clip showed Emma Briggs kneeling beside a woman's corpse, her hands performing CPR in a room filled with toxic smoke. She screamed, "Somebody help me!" But no one came. The final video was from the infrared integrated camera on Emma's gear during Operation Glass Dagger. The footage showed Emma carrying a little girl through rubble, bullets whizzing past, then both of them crashing to the ground as a rocket exploded nearby. Blood splattered across the lens. Within 6 hours, the hashtag #DarkEchoTruth spread like wildfire across social media platforms. On Twitter, it reached over 29 million mentions. TikTok exploded with analysis videos replaying every second of footage. On Reddit, hundreds of threads emerged, demanding a full-scale investigation into Project Echo. This was no longer a soldier story. It had become an international scandal. Meanwhile, 17 witnesses, including the civilians Emma had rescued, were placed on a special UN-funded commercial flight to Geneva, Switzerland. Among them was the little girl from that night, now adopted and renamed Hope. However, intelligence revealed that Black River had deployed a strike team to intercept the plane during its technical stop in Paris. But Camille, now the head of the media operation, had planned. She turned the entire event into a global live broadcast, streamed across more than 42 platforms, with coverage from major outlets like BBC, Al Jazeera, NHK, and CNN. Any interference would be exposed in real time to hundreds of millions of viewers. Black River withdrew silently. They didn't dare attack in front of the world's eyes. When Emma arrived at the United Nations headquarters, she didn't walk out like a wounded soldier. She wore a black blazer, no uniform, no medals. Quietly, she escorted each witness. Witness the bereaved parents, the amputees, those still bearing injection scars, into the International Hearing Chamber. Backstage, Senator James Williams, the man who had once voted to approve the classified budget for Black River, approached her. He offered, "Cancel the hearing. In return, you'll receive the Medal of Honor, full immunity, and a $5 million support package to live the rest of your life in peace." Emma looked at him, not with anger, not with disdain, but as if he were a crumpled, worn-out suit jacket. "I don't need money. I need the truth to survive." She stepped into the hearing room. No legal team, no lengthy speech, just a laptop. Emma opened it and played a 9-minute video, a compilation of irrefutable evidence, footage of adults dying, children sobbing without sound, mercenaries torturing blindfolded detainees, and signed orders from U.S. officials. When the video ended, the entire room fell silent. Then a council member from Kenya stood up, eyes brimming with tears. "If this is the real America, then you, not anyone else, are the America we once believed in." In front of a packed hall at the United Nations, where bold oaths had been sworn and belated apologies whispered, Callista Vaughn, the Admiral who once commanded over 22,000 naval troops, stepped onto the witness stand. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, her uniform crisp, her gaze unwavering. She held the microphone with both hands and spoke slowly. "I was the one who signed the no-action order during Operation Glass Dagger. I believed it was the right decision for national security. But I was wrong. And it was Emma Briggs, the woman I once deemed undisciplined, who kept my conscience from dying entirely." The room was so silent that the faint clatter of a pen touching the table could be heard. Then the door opened. Crispin, once a SEAL who had survived ambushes in Helmand alongside Emma, walked in wearing a gray prison jumpsuit. 2 armed guards flanked him. His face was gaunt, his wrists in shackles. But when he began to speak, his voice was firm and without hesitation. "I am Crispin Morris. I admit that I sent the base coordinates to Black River. I know it was an act of treason. But you don't understand. They threatened my wife, my daughter. I have proof. Everything is stored in the hard drive I gave Camille Harris." Camille, seated in the second row, immediately stepped forward. She produced a stack of color-printed documents, along with a decrypted secure hard drive. Inside, bank statements, contracts from a shell company named Stalton Dynamics LLC, and evidence of more than $3.2 million transferred to an offshore account in Belize, an account under the name of James Williams, the powerful senator who once chaired the Senate Armed Services Committee. "This is the money paid to look the other way," Camille said. "And here is a list of 48 additional transfers related to Project Echo." News spread worldwide within an hour. Kessler, the director of the Office of Strategic Intelligence, OIS, was immediately placed on a global most wanted list. But before vanishing from the radar, he released a video to the press. "Echo is only the tip. Don't think you've defused the bomb. You've only seen the ripples on the surface." While the world burned with revelations, Emma Briggs quietly returned to the U.S. No welcoming flights, no parades. She gave no interviews, released no books. The first thing she did was visit Arlington Cemetery, where 4 of her teammates lie buried. "We saved 37 lives, but I lost 4 people I called family," she whispered, placing an old seal pin on their graves. In a letter from Canada, a child's handwriting, neat and careful, read, "You're my hero. I remember when you carried me out of that dark room. Now I'm in 4th grade, and I want to be like you." The letter had no name, just a drawing, a sniper holding a little girl beneath a rain of bombs. Soon after, the President of the United States issued an emergency order establishing the International Oversight Commission on Security Operations, a new organization with transnational authority, operating independently and reporting directly to the United Nations. The first person appointed as director, Camille Harris. Callista Vaughn submitted her retirement. At her farewell ceremony at the Naval Academy, she said just one sentence: "After 31 years carrying a weapon, I've chosen to carry a pen. I'll train recruits not only how to fight, but how not to become enemies of justice." Crispin was sentenced to 22 years in prison for treason. At the sentencing, Emma appeared unexpectedly. She stood, asking to speak. "I forgive you, but I cannot forget, because there are still people lying where you walked away." And when studios, publishers, and streaming platforms approached, offering millions for the story of the woman betrayed, Emma simply smiled. "I'll teach sniper training, but before I teach someone how to pull the trigger, I'll teach them how to tell right from wrong." She closed the door on the past, but the world would never forget her. The International Conference on the Ethics of War was held in Berlin in the bitter cold of mid-December. On the speaker's platform were defense ministers, security leaders, and scholars of international law. But when the name Emma Briggs echoed through the sound system, the entire hall rose to their feet without being asked. She stepped up to the podium with no makeup, no VIP badge, no PR team trailing behind. Just a soldier in a faded old coat, back straight, gaze steady. "I have nothing to say about myself. I was simply the first to walk into the room full of dead children, and the last to leave." There wasn't a single camera shutter, only a silence so thick it threatened to break. She spoke about the 7-year-old girl in the testing facility. She didn't ask if I had a gun. She asked, "Do you have water?" It was the moment when every delegate in the hall, from Sweden to Sudan, put down their pens and looked up. 2 days later, Resolution 471B, informally known as the Briggs Protocol, was unanimously passed by all 193 United Nations member states. A total ban on any form of biological or chemical research on unarmed civilians, regardless of nationality or conflict status. Camille Harris, after a year serving as director of the International Oversight Commission, officially announced the end of her term. During the handover, she unpinned the DOJ badge from her lapel and handed it to a young agent from Haiti. "Don't sign any order your heart can't carry. If you have to choose between a command and your conscience, choose your conscience. It's the last armor that keeps you whole." Emma left the conference without delivering a farewell speech. Snow drifted softly over Berlin's streets. She walked alone, hands in her pockets, the shoulder of her military coat torn, but still warm with the fire of memory. From a distance, Callista Vaughn sat in a wheelchair, waiting outside the hotel gates. They didn't need to say anything, just a nod, like 2 old warriors who had lost more than they had won, but were still grateful to be alive to tell the tale. On the way to the airport, a group of black students from Atlanta asked to take a photo with her. A boy asked, "Were you ever scared?" Emma knelt, gently taking his hand. "Of course. many times. But I learned how to keep walking while still being afraid. That's the difference. As the plane lifted off from Berlin-Tegel, soaring above pristine white clouds, below, her name began flooding the headlines. The woman who refused to stay silent, the SEAL who fought her government. Emma Briggs, a name that saved innocence. Back in her small home in Carolina, she disappeared from public view. She spent her time writing humanitarian training manuals for the International Special Forces, teaching sniping, but also teaching ethics, choices, and memory. The world thought the story was over. But Camille, now living off the grid in Norway, received a steel-encased hard drive. Inside was a file named Glasshouse, Phase 2. No return address, only a handwritten note. If next time they choose darkness, then light it up with truth. In the final video file, a deep voice echoed, unclear whether it was real or synthesized. What will you do when justice turns its back on the very ones sworn to uphold it? Will you stay silent, or will you rise? And somewhere, among the many who once bowed to wrong, there are now millions standing. Because Emma Briggs went first, and she never backed down. I hope you enjoyed this story. Like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.